Okay, yes. All right, so today we're talking about how to reduce sugar intake and decrease inflammation. Notice I didn't say how to completely eliminate sugar, right? We're going to take the realistic approach that's actually going to get you to where you want to be. So we're going to discuss how sugar takes over your brain and your taste buds and may lead you to make bad decisions. We're going to talk about how to get sugar out of your diet, how to retrain your taste buds, and what are some other alternatives if you want to get away from sugar. So sugar is everywhere. I don't think I needed to tell you that. Even though sugar consumption has been coming down over the past 2 to 3 decades, we're still nowhere near where we need to be with how much sugar we're taking in. People are taking in more than 50 to 100 grams of sugar a day of artificial added sugars. In fact, the American Pediatric Association has recommended that children not take in more than 25 grams a day of added sugar, which is still a lot, because for you to help you visualize how much 25 grams of sugar is, you divide that number by 4. So that's roughly 6 teaspoons of sugar. Look, would you give your kids 6 teaspoons of sugar in a day? I don't think so, but many of us adults are actually doing far more than that. So candy and all the things that kids get attracted to, this is how we celebrate. This is how we reward good behavior. You know, at school, my kids come home with candy at least once or twice a week, even though I keep saying, can we not do this? Cereals and, these box packaged products full of sugar. Every time I pick up a cereal box, I go right to carbs and added sugars. It's really hard to find a cereal with less than 30 grams of sugar in a serving. So something to be aware of. I know orange juice is healthy and delicious. We think of it as something healthy, but look at what we've done to an orange. An orange is a whole food. It's got all the fiber in it. And when we juice it, we take out all the fiber, which means that the liquid left behind becomes very sugary. So, avoiding juice is probably a good idea. And sticking to other liquids is really helpful. Really, the only drink in our house is water and maybe kombucha. Let's see here. Okay, so let's say you go out to a restaurant and maybe you order some Chinese food. Chinese food in the US is nothing like Chinese food in China. It's very sugary. It is not nearly the same thing. So there's something about our way of eating here where we entice people with sugar. Sauces and things like that line grocery stores full of sugar. Just turn the labels over and start reading. A certain coffee chain that makes very high calorie liquid sugar drinks. And many of these are being consumed by young people. I used to take the train to work, and kids would be on the train, like junior high school kids, with a giant sugary drink of coffee. So a lot of us are drinking our sugar. And of course, when you go to the dairy section in the grocery store, you might see words like light, low fat, but what you need to look at is what's on the label. How did they make it taste good if they took out all the fat? Right? So a lot of times they're adding sugar back in. And even something like bread that you wouldn't think about as being a processed product with a lot of sugar in it, turn over your bread label and read the ingredients. If you can get through that list of words that are impossible to pronounce, oftentimes one of the first few ingredients is something that is a sugar. So not all carbs are created equal. There are some good carbs, and I want to have a balanced discussion. So let's talk about natural versus artificial sugars. So fruit contains fructose and some other simple sugars. These are natural sugars. They're small molecules, which is problematic because they're easy to break down, which means you get a big spike in blood sugar. But there are some other good things in this strawberry, like, vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, fiber that buffers that. And then there's your artificial sugars, high fructose corn syrup. These are the things you really want to stay away from. So whenever given the choice, pick the natural sugar. So we kind of have this running joke at our house, like once in a while, my kids will get a Coke, and my kids will always say, we'll take the Mexican Coke because it has cane sugar in it versus the American one that oftentimes has high fructose corn syrup. I'd rather you just have natural sugar. And then when we talk about carbs, we talk about simple versus complex. So simple means small molecules, easy to break down, rapid increase in blood sugar, which is not good. So this could be like table sugar here versus carbs here in a bowl of nuts and seeds. These are complex carbs. These are big molecules. They're hard to break down. And that means they don't lead to a big spike in blood sugar, which is a good thing. Okay, so how does sugar manipulate us and our different body systems? Well, first of all, it hits just the right spots in the brain. There are areas that are the reward areas of the brain, and dopamine is released. So when we consume sugar, dopamine is released, which makes us go back and do that same behavior that released the dopamine, and then more dopamine is released. Interestingly enough, also, when we consume sugar, opioid receptors are also turned on. So this is why we feel good when we eat sugar, right? Except that the feeling is pretty temporary. Our taste buds are hijacked. So we lose our interest in the taste of natural foods, and we start looking for these very extreme taste profiles with lots and lots of sugar, artificial fats. I mean, there's, a reason to why, different packaged products are produced the way they are, because they test these out on consumers to see what causes people to consume more of these artificial foods. So when you have a lot of sugar in your diet, your taste buds kind of lose their sensitivity for natural foods. Fortunately, you can retrain them. Leaky gut. This is something that we'll talk about in a future webinar, but eating a lot of sugar actually causes changes in the types of friendly bugs and non-friendly bugs that grow and thrive in your large intestine, the gut microbiome. And not only do the good bugs maybe kind of diminish in number, but you can actually get leaky gut, which is a state where the lining of your GI tract is not so intact. It's porous, things can leak out, and unwanted things can get into the body. And this is really one of the foundational strategies to improving our immune health, is to get our gut health in order. And treating leaky gut is super important. Cutting out sugar helps repair leaky gut. Every time you eat sugar, your pancreas, so that the insulin can go and pull sugar out of the blood and into our cells. So if you're eating a lot of sugar, even if you don't have diabetes, you're going to keep sort of whipping your pancreas and stressing it out, because every time sugar comes in, it's going to have to put insulin out there. And there's a lot of other downstream effects to insulin getting secreted. So when insulin goes up, the next thing that it does is cortisol goes up. Cortisol is a hormone that is secreted from the adrenal glands. There's an adrenal gland on top of each kidney, and its job is to produce many hormones, cortisol being one of them. So basically the way it works is you consume sugar, your pancreas puts out insulin. When insulin goes up, cortisol goes up. Here's something most people don't know. When cortisol is up, thyroid is suppressed. Right? So if you have a thyroid issue, one of the best things you could do is cut out sugar so that this cycle doesn't happen. Okay. And let's think about some other ways that sugar derails our bodies. So when we eat a lot of sugar, there's dehydration that can happen. It just naturally, you'll lose fluid because of all the sugar that's in the bloodstream. There's many different ways that inflammation can get incited because of sugar. There are various biochemical pathways that are turned on as a result. And this is actually really important for MS. I actually put a paper that I found talking about advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. Basically, what you need to know about this is when sugar in our diet interacts with proteins or fats in our body, you can develop these AGEs that can be very inflammatory. So again, if you remove the sugar, you'll have less AGEs. Okay. Sugar can actually cause pain. I've had patients who are on a ton of Motrin and Tylenol and even opioids for pain, for joint pain. And when they do an elimination diet and cut out sugar, their pain goes away. So this is a perfect illustration of how Western medicine treats pain. Okay, you have pain, we're going to give you pain medicine, but there's no investigation as to why there's pain. And sometimes you don't need to be on all those medications. You just need to look at the underlying cause. And one of the things I'm always pushing on is, how do you really get to things at the root cause level? So I'm always pushing to say, like, how do we go upstream? You know, yes, there's pain because there's inflammation. Why is there inflammation? Maybe because there's a lot of sugar in the diet. When we eat a lot of sugar, infections tend to happen. So bacteria and yeast thrive on sugar. So it's basically like you're just providing their food source. So if you want to get rid of these recurrent infections, especially yeast infections, you got to cut off their food source. So cut out the sugar. Sugar drives heart disease, which actually is important in an autoimmune condition like MS, because there's a lot of inflammation in blood vessels. Sugar actually leads to anxiety and depression, so it can definitely impact mood. It can worsen fatigue and brain fog. And, you know, I know a lot of us with fatigue may rely on sugar for that burst of energy, but there's always a crash afterwards, and it's not the long-term solution. And finally, we talked about leaky gut. So here we go. I love this picture because sometimes when I try to tell somebody, like, maybe we should talk about sugar, they kind of look at me like, I don't think I have a sugar problem. I don't know. It's up to you to decide if you have a sugar problem, but I'm going to give you some things to think about. Do you regularly seek out sugar? You know, as it's getting closer to bedtime, you start thinking about, oh, it'd be so nice if I had something sweet, or at the end of every meal, you want something sweet. When you eat some sugar, you feel more like yourself, right? And this can happen to people who have very unstable blood sugars, where their mood kind of gets wonky, and, you know, they get sugar back in themselves and they feel better. You can't appreciate the taste of natural food and kale, and some of these foods don't actually sound appealing to you. It may be because your taste buds are so overloaded that they just can't appreciate the taste of natural foods. Do you guys all know what hangry is? It's when you're hungry and angry. So this can happen close to the timing of your next meal. So, you know, all of a sudden you feel like, okay, I feel irritable. Some people can break out into a sweat, have palpitations or fast heart rate, get anxious even. And as soon as they eat, they feel good again. That's a pretty good sign that you have unstable blood sugars. And the fix to that isn't more sugar. The fix to that is getting rid of sugar and then adding in protein and good fats into the diet. How about this one? I know many of us struggle with this one. You have trouble either falling asleep or staying asleep, or both, right? Some of this may have to do actually with how cortisol hormone is changing throughout the night. And sugar, remember, spikes your cortisol. So if you're eating sugar close to bedtime, it's possible that you're spiking your cortisol, you know, a little bit too early at 3, 4 in the morning, and you're getting that early morning awakening. Of course, there's many other reasons for these sleep problems, stress being right up there with sugar. Frequent infections, because you're feeding all the bacteria and yeast, but this can actually manifest as chronic nasal or sinus problems. Spastic colon, which some people kind of think of as irritable bowel syndrome or IBS, but it could just be bloating, pain, crampiness. Oftentimes these can be due to yeast and overgrowth. And of course, fatigue is something that people with a lot of sugar in their diet can experience because they keep crashing after the sugar wears off. Mood changes, anxiety, depression, and difficulty concentrating, brain fog. I know there's a lot of non-specific things on this page, but when you kind of get into the world of integrative and functional medicine, you'll see like everything affects everything. And sometimes you have to do a little bit of experimentation before you can tease it all out. But I would say it's unusual for fatigue to be caused only by sugar consumption. Everything is multifactorial. There's multiple things that feed into a symptom or a diagnosis. So I want us to stop really thinking about things in very simplistic terms, right? I'm sure you've all gotten emails forwarded to you. Okay, mercury is the cause of MS. Well, it's one of the contributing factors. It's not the thing that, does you in. So I want you to imagine a different way of moving throughout your day. This is the perfect time to do it because it's the beginning of the year. Maybe you have a New Year's resolution, and I'd love for this to be the year that you actually make those changes and become that person that you've always sort of envisioned yourself to be. So can you start eating differently? And could you actually enjoy those foods? It's very, very possible. Is it possible to not be hungry and hangry all the time, right? Yes. If we could stabilize blood sugars, that is very much possible. Could you feel more energized? Can your brain work better where you can concentrate more and you don't, get rid of the cobwebs, the brain fog that plagues a lot of us? Can your pain actually be less? Can your mood be better? Less anxiety? What if you could get deeper, longer, more restorative sleep? If I had to pick one lifestyle habit that's my favorite, it would be sleep, hands down, even over nutrition, because it's when our bodies repair. And if we're not getting good sleep, we're just not giving our body the repair that it needs. Very hard to start healing. So cutting out sugar can help with improving sleep, improving weight loss. So these are, I want you to start thinking about and just imagining that a very different person in 3 weeks, maybe even less, because some of these changes Can somebody give me a thumbs up if you could still hear me? Okay, got it. Thank you. I want you to just open your heart and mind to a for you. It's possible for all of us, no matter where we are on that spectrum between perfect health. We can all move towards better health, 100% guaranteed. So some questions to ask yourself: is sugar moving you towards better health? I mean, I know that's an easy one to answer, but think about what are all the different ways you're derailing yourself for that joy that comes with eating sugar. When thinking about cutting down sugar, we have to think about, why is this important now? You know, why would we put the time and effort into making this change now? I want you to think about, is this the right time for you to commit to yourself, right? Time is brain. The sooner we start working on cutting sugar down and working on other lifestyle habits, the better progress and the greater success we're going to have. I want you to think about choosing a realistic goal, right? It's not realistic to say, I'm going to stop eating sugar 100% for the next month. I just don't think that's how most of us are wired. So I want you to always think about, is your goal realistic? And then you got to tell others so that you stay accountable. It's a lot harder to kind of let yourself down when you've already told other people you're working on this. And part of what we do in our MS community with Truemedicine is we're working on goals all the time. So people know what we're working on. They're checking on us, and we're checking on other people. It really helps to have another friend or family member doing this with you. So find someone else who would be interested and do it together. And then you got to prepare your house. Like, just get the stuff out that you don't want to eat, because why tempt yourself, right? In our house, we rarely keep sugar and ice cream. I make it really hard and expensive. Yes, we can have it when we're out, but it's not the thing we do every day. So make sure you also have healthy foods that you enjoy, because I think anytime you take something pleasurable away from people, you have to replace it with something else. Otherwise, we'd all be pretty cranky. And then here's my big disclaimer. If you have diabetes, prediabetes, unstable blood sugars, low blood sugars, or you're on medications or supplements to lower blood sugar, please talk to your doctor before all of a sudden cutting sugar down, because all of a sudden your sugars can just tank and you will have a really bad outcome. In fact, it could be very fatal, and low blood sugars can kill you over the course of a few minutes. So I want you to always be careful and err on the side of caution. I don't like drastic, rapid changes. I like slow, sustained changes. That's how habit change happens. Okay, so we're going to retrain those taste buds. Mindset is super important. You have to believe that this is possible. If you get sugar out, your taste buds will come back. Believe in the fact that change is possible. 100%. I see this all the time. Sometimes it takes people a while to kind of buy in, but once they do and they have a small win up front, they keep wanting to add on to all the small little changes that they've made. Just takes about 3 to 4 weeks to start enjoying the taste of natural foods. Oh, and I should tell you, the first 2 to 3 weeks are hard. You will probably be cranky, moody. Your sleep might be not the best. You might be fatigued, but it does get easier for sure. So what are you going to eat? If we're cutting down a lot of the sugars in your diet, let's have other things in the house that are helpful, that are healthy for you. Nuts and seeds. These have a lot of good fats, a lot of complex carbs. They kind of have a good texture to them, so they will satisfy you in a different way. I also like fruit. If you're going to allow yourself to have fruits, a few pieces of a frozen mango, couple of in just satiating you so that your brain stops, kind of going crazy over the fact that you stopped giving it sugar. Also, as I said, like think about some fruits and vegetables that can actually satisfy you in a very different way. Okay, and I'm getting the internet unstable message again. Can you all hear me? Yes, thank you. Okay, so when you're at the store, buy the crunchy vegetables, celery, carrots, jicama, and just have those around the house. Maybe spend 10 minutes chopping them and keep them in the fridge, and when you need them, they're ready to go. Okay, can you eat fruit? This is a question I get a lot, and I would say it's up to you and your chosen goal. Some people are, have a personality where they kind of have to cut everything out cold turkey, suffer for a few weeks, and then they're good. They feel good on the other side. Other people need a more gradual approach. So whether you do an all or none or a more gradual approach is really up to you, because you know yourself best. So I would say a little bit of fruit is okay, because it's going to buffer that rise in sugar because of the fiber that it has, the vitamins and minerals it has, and also phytonutrients. And I'm going to guess many of you may not know what phytonutrients are. I don't know why we just don't talk about them in our mainstream culture, but these are vividly colored fruits and vegetables that have a lot of anti-inflammatory and antioxidant activity. So when you're picking foods, go for color, because that means there's a lot of healing molecules there. Okay, so it's up to you to decide how you want to do it. But if you are going to do a fruit, I'd also say put a protein next to it. So if you're going to have a slice of an apple, put some almond butter on it. It actually tastes really good, and it'll sort of cut the sugar experience from the apple, and you'll still feel very satiated. And anytime you stick a protein next to a sugar, the sugar ends up being not so problematic for the body. The sugar doesn't rise as much. Okay, and then let's talk about, are there healthier sugars? Because not all sugars and carbs are created equal. So when I'm going to give you the list here of healthier sugars, but again, keep in mind, you should be using them in small amounts. And so some of these are honey, which has immune benefits if you're using local honey. It has prebiotic benefits. Prebiotics are fibrous foods that actually help feed our good bugs in the microbiome. So honey has a lot of benefits, but again, small amounts. Let's see, maple syrup. Okay, sorry, I'm getting a message that sound is cutting out in some parts. I'm going to just keep going because we're in the middle of a storm. Okay, fruit we talked about. Stevia comes from a plant. It doesn't taste quite like table sugar, but it's something you can get used to, and it's not so bad for raising blood sugar. Blackstrap molasses, you have corn syrup, lucuma powder, date syrup, also sugar alcohols, things like xylitol, can sweeten something that you're making without the big rise in sugar like you would get with white table sugar. Okay, and then let's talk about artificial sweeteners, because people always ask me, what about Splenda and some of the other things that you'll get brought to your table when you go out to eat. So I would always pick natural sugars over artificial ones. There's evidence that these artificial 0-calorie sweeteners can cause allergic reactions. They can disrupt your gut microbiome. They can disrupt hormones. In fact, people who are diabetics, a lot of these sugars are marketed to them. Over the long-term use of these artificial sweeteners can lead to worsening blood sugar control. Okay, and is cutting sugar down worth it? Absolutely. It might actually be the most important thing you do for your health. If there's a lot of sugar in your diet, you're going to feel better. It's going to change your relationship to foods. You'll pick different foods. You'll make different decisions and choices. And cutting sugar down is a gateway to other good habits. All of a sudden, because you can appreciate natural foods, you may choose a salad versus pasta at a restaurant. And you might end up sleeping better. And you realize that, okay, things are working out. So you're going to start doing more of those things. So this is how I think sugar actually ends up snowballing into other good habits. And if we are to treat many diseases at the root cause, including autoimmunity and MS, we have to go upstream. We have to keep asking, well, why? Why is this happening? And so cutting sugar out is one of those root causes that actually can really change the way your immune system functions. And then I want to talk about autoimmunity and MS. Are they reversible? So I want to make the distinction that we can't cure autoimmunity and we can't cure MS. We are all stuck with this diagnosis for the remainder of our days here. However, it is very much possible to heal autoimmunity and to heal MS. And by healing, what I mean is you bring the body back towards a more balanced state where there's an opportunity for repair and restoration and regeneration rather than constantly fueling the flames of inflammation. So I think of the immune system as a gradient or a spectrum. You can be right over here on the very cool, well-regulated side where the immune system's following all the rules. It knows what to attack, like bacteria and fungi and other microorganisms. And it also knows what to leave alone, like our own tissues and the foods we eat. That's a well-regulated immune system that follows the rules. On this side, you have dysregulation. The immune system's forgotten the rules and it doesn't know what to attack. It's gotten confused. And one day it can learn to make antibodies against our own tissues or foods that we're eating. We call that a food sensitivity. So you can move back and forth on this continuum based on what's going on in your environment. So if, let's say you're on vacation, you're getting your 8 hours of sleep, you're not dealing with your stressful job, you're at a place that's serving whole foods and foods that are good and healthy for you. In that time frame, you're sending all kinds of good information from your environment into your body, into your DNA, telling which genes to turn on and off, and the immune system starts straightening out. And then on the other side, where you could be very stressed out, not sleeping, eating a lot of artificial foods, the immune system can move towards that greater dysregulation. And so this is when you might have a relapse or notice a progression of your symptoms. We know that we can move back and forth on this gradient because we have good days and bad days. So autoimmunity isn't a switch where it's either on or off. I think of it as a gradient. Okay, so how should you get started? You can say, I'm going to cut down sugar this year. It's a good start, but it's not specific enough. And I bet that you won't succeed. If you really truly want to succeed, you have to be more regimented about it and to really clearly think through what it is that you're actually going to do to make this happen, right? So in our program, we write a lot of SMART goals. And if you've never written one, I'll kind of go over one with you. But SMART goals help us stay hyper-focused on the goal. And you can actually grab pen and paper right now and do this as we're talking, because, hey, we're here together. We might as well do it, right? So write down your goal, be specific about it, and then you could tell everybody for accountability and to also call them when you're having a weak moment. So the S in SMART stands for specific. What is it that is going to be accomplished, right? And what steps will you take? Okay. How are you actually going to cut out sugar? The M in SMART is for measurable. Do you have a way of measuring your goal? How much? How well are you going to do something? How many days a week are you going to go without sugar, for example? Is your goal achievable? Is it something that's actually doable? If you're going to say, I'm going to go 100% no sugar, I don't know. Is that doable? Maybe, maybe not. Also, do you have the tools that you need to make it happen? The R is for relevant. So why is this important now? Like, why did you show up to this webinar today? There must have been a reason, right? You could have just glossed over it and said, that's not important. I don't have a sugar problem. I don't really care about this symptom or these medications and side effects, right? And then finally, time-based. What's your time frame? Is it 3 weeks or 6 months? What's the schedule you're going to put yourself on? So let's see, are there any questions? And what I'll do is look through the chat and see, let's see, okay, so there's a question here. How long after reducing sugar intake does it take to see the benefits in blood sugar control and not getting hangry? Oh, it's pretty quick. So for people who have had, do you guys know what a CGM is? A continuous glucose monitor? It's immediate. You cut the sugar down and the blood sugars will come down. So pretty quick. And then that feeling of not being hangry, also pretty quick, within a few days, I would say. But, you can't just cut the carbs down. You got to make sure you're putting in the protein and the good fats. And by good fat, I'm talking about oils like avocado, olive oil, coconut oil, nuts, seeds, and just getting more of these foods in that kind of satiate you and you're not hungry all the time. Thank you. I've put our website here. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We have a private Facebook group. I put a lot of time into creating short little videos on Instagram and Facebook that just gives you like a quick tidbit of evidence-based information so you can start adding to your knowledge.